Hey y'all, it's me. It has begun. The first just half bucket today of beans, but that's going to change really, really quickly. They're coming on really fast. Let me plug my phone up. I've almost ran my battery dead. All right, and here we go. Some of y'all had expressed interest in learning to can beans, so today I thought we'd just have a little conversation while we work on these first beans. And I like just a little pillowcase because to me it's just more comfortable. And a towel, if you use a towel, then unfortunately everything kind of gets stuck in little knobs. Pillowcase being nice and smooth, it doesn't happen that way. And a lot of people use newspaper or paper bag or whatever like that, but I just happen to like a little pillowcase. So, and I use just a little paring knife. To me, that makes it easy to just, if you pop it just through the bean, it makes it easy to hold on and pull that string. I don't pop it all the way through, just through the first side and then pull the string. Sometimes they won't string completely, and then through the second side and pull the string. But the goal is to get absolutely as many strings off the beans as you can. If you've ever had beans that are stringy, you know how just unpleasant that is. That's just not something that anybody, I don't think anybody would really like stringy beans. Okay, let me show you just real simply up close. Just pop it through and then pull it, pop it through again, and pull it. And I do that until I have just a pretty good little handful. And then I'll just break them and put them in my little bowl over here. But this video won't get into the actual canning of them. So if that's the only part you're interested in, you can just join us for that one or just hang around and we'll chat. But years back, and sometimes when you break them, yeah, you'll find the rest of that string. Just grab it and get rid of it. Years back, my mother-in-law was the fastest person I've ever seen in stringing beans. I never could catch her. Never, ever could. She was really good at it. The second year that Hugh and I were married, I was expecting Aaron. We had him in October of, no, excuse me, I had him January of 1982. Hugh and I were married in October of 1980. So anyway, that first time I ever had an experience really putting up beans, I was, I don't know, however many, about 6 months pregnant, I guess, something like that, 5 months pregnant. And my mother-in-law actually canned on an old wood cook stove. That was, I don't know, I guess the idea was to save on electricity. It might also have been she just didn't want to break the ice down on her stove. And I understand that. We actually have, for our stove, we actually have canning eyes that we replace in the fall of the year. We use those while we're canning. And they're just more sturdy made and will hold that heavy canner up without breaking anything. But it's just a very, very hot July and August putting up beans with a wood stove, wood cook stove. Next year, we're hoping if we have the little canning shed built out here on the side of the house, we can actually do our canning out there and not heat the house up at all, because it does make it really intensely hot in here, even just cooking on a regular stove. But I know when my mother-in-law was alive, my father-in-law was a bean eater. He loved beans, any kind of bean, and it wasn't a lunch or a dinner if there wasn't beans on his plate. So she put up usually at least 300 quarts of green beans every year, and that was back in, my goodness, and we probably put up at least that many quarts of tomatoes, and I'd say we'll probably put up about half that because we don't eat beans every day, but that's still a whole lot of beans, whole lot. green beans as a child. It's probably my favorite vegetable, but I still love them, but it's not my favorite vegetable any longer. I don't know how long you guys are going to hold out just sitting here watching me cut beans. So this will be a short video. I won't bore you for that long. I've got my critters asleep all over the house. 3 of them, my loud ones, are actually closed in the laundry room, because if they weren't, they would find something to bark at some point, and it would break your eardrums. So, anyway, I hope your week is going well. We're just poking along here. He was in the garden this morning. I didn't go up with him, but he was in the garden this morning fighting the Japanese beetle war. And he said that he thinks we're getting ahead of them. There wasn't nearly as many this morning as there have been the last couple mornings. So if we can just get rid of a lot of the females before they have a chance to lay their eggs in the soil, that'll put us way ahead for next year. But yeah, I had mentioned to some of y'all, Aaron had put up some of the Japanese beetle traps, or some of the Japanese beetle traps, and we found out fairly quickly that those need to be far, far away from your garden, because they actually will call the beetles in. They have a really strong attractant. I couldn't smell anything, but apparently the beetles do, and it pulls them in tremendously. And so if you use them, that's good, but like Lisa Ziegler says, see if you can talk your neighbor into letting you put it in their yard, so that way the beetles will go to their yard. I'm just teasing, obviously nobody's going to ask their neighbor to do that, but if you have enough property, or if you live in close to a forest line or something, just try to scoot those traps as far away from your property, your garden, as you can. And boy, do they love roses. They've really eaten the leaves on Aaron and Corey's roses pretty considerably. But as you can see, I would not win a speed bean cutting version. So when I put up a canner of beans, I know it's going to take all day. There's times when he was helping me, but honestly, don't tell him I said this, he leaves too many strings on the beans, so I kind of like it for him to be busy outside. But if he is in here helping, we can do 3 canner runs of beans in a day fairly easily. I mean, it takes the whole day, but in a canner run of beans, for those of you that don't can, a canner run is 7 quarts. I rarely put up anything in a pint, and I do put up the half gallons. I have a half-gallon canner, and I use the half-gallon when I'm just putting up just tomato juice, because the tomato juice, when we're making a soup or a chili or something of that nature, we'll use at least a half a gallon in it. Last year, I think we started about September freezing apple butter, and we'll do that one too, because I've got a wonderful recipe for apple butter, and I just cook it down for I think about 3 hours in my slow cooker, which my slow cooker for me is an Instant Pot, but if you have just a regular slow cooker, that works just fine. And just a wonderful recipe for apple butter. It's not low carb by any stretch of the imagination. But speaking of low carb, Q and I have decided that I did go to the doctor this week, and my A1C came back that I am now officially pre-diabetic. And that didn't surprise me at all, because we have eaten horribly over the last few years and just haven't been able to get control of the carbs. But I'm hoping that this was kind of a kick in the seat to kind of work me toward that direction, and for my sake and for Hugh's. But we tried the keto diet about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years back, and it was just something that neither one of us wanted to do for long term. Some of y'all might do wonderfully on it, but what we have determined is that we're going to just get serious and do a low carb diet. And a low carb basically consists of about 100 grams of carbs a day, and that's not keto by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still pretty limiting. So, for instance, 2 slices of bread would equal 44 grams of carbs. So that's almost half of your day's allowance. And so we'll just have to be really, really careful. But if we replace, if we do just add in a lot of vegetables, which we need to be doing anyway, vegetables have carbs, but they're a slow digesting carb. So for the most part, they're on the low glycemic end of the index, and we can add no, Bailey, don't come that way, baby. He's wanting to come through to get out from behind the chair, but I've got my phone plugged up. So anyway, that will be a very good thing for Hugh and I to do, and for Aaron as well. And Corey, I'm certain she eats a lot of vegetables anyway. So we're just gonna work on this health issue, and I'm not ever going to poke over into diabetes. It's my daddy was a diabetic, and Hugh's mother was diabetic, and we just need to do something different. Hugh's been diabetic since he in his 40s. Actually, he was 40 years old when he was diagnosed, and we for many years managed to keep him from having to do anything other than just medication that he takes by mouth. And that's always been my goal, is that he never have to go on insulin. And as of today, we still are at that point. He still just takes his medication by mouth. And we're just going to try to start getting everybody's blood sugars under control. And so anyway, I know some of y'all out there deal with diabetes, and it's a horrible disease. So let's just, if you're interested, let's just work on this low carb thing together. That helps your blood sugars more than anything. Walking, I think my calf and my ankle are almost to the point of being able to walk again. I actually had to go and have an ultrasound on my leg last week, because my left ankle, that's the ankle on the leg where I had damaged my calf, it was swelling really significantly, and he was concerned that there might have been a blood clot happening, since that was where I had damaged my leg. So I went and had the ultrasound, and there were no blood clots, but there is some kind of a little cyst on the back of my knee that might be causing the swelling. So I tell you what, this getting old stuff sucks. But I do know getting some of the weight off of my body will help with the problems I'm having with the swelling and all. But the ankle, there's not, or the knee, there's not anything that they suggested. It's something that is fairly common, and eventually I guess it will just resolve its own self. So that's good. But that's just what's been going on here. Hugh had all those health conditions last year, and over the past 3 years, because he had his stroke in 2020, and he had the prostate cancer in 2021, and then he had the neck surgery in 2022. And I told him at the beginning of this year, I said, you're not allowed to get sick or get hurt in any form this year. It's not going to happen, so just make sure. And so it looks like I've replaced him this year. I guess it was my turn, but I don't want a turn. Let's just not do this. Oh well. Life happens. But I'm going to tell you guys, you saw the baby calf that was born on Jared's birthday. And Hugh and I discussed the other night. We had our bull Iggy, and he was a beautiful big old red white faced bull that we had made into a pet, and he was just a little bit unnerving because he was a pet and he was a 1,200-pound pet. So anyway, I finally convinced Hugh that we probably needed to let Iggy go because I was so afraid that Iggy was going to, just get rambunctious with Hugh and playful and maybe hurt him at some point. So Hugh did. He found a buyer for Iggy that wanted him to service his own herd. So Iggy's a happy boy somewhere on somebody's farm. But this baby that was born the other day, his daddy is Samson, and Samson is a fabulous bull. He's about an 8, 9, he may even be a 10-year-old bull. But bulls, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but bulls actually grow until they die. And unfortunately, when a bull gets old, a lot of the time, they get so heavy that their body can't support their weight any longer. Their legs can't support their weight any longer, and a lot of times they will break a leg and have to be put down. And Samson is not to that point, but he has gotten so big that he is dangerous for the size cattle that we have in this part of the state. And so Samson will be moving on to another herd somewhere probably out east where the cattle are larger than ours and Sean's. But he has been a wonderful, wonderful bull, so sweet-natured. And then the mama of the bull that was born on Jared's birthday, she has been a wonderful, wonderful mama. She's had and raised 3 cows now, maybe 4. Well, anyway, 3. No, just 3, including Ruby Lee. And Ruby Lee was her first calf that was born on December 31st, and that was on the actual Jared's second anniversary date. So nobody can convince me that it's just purely coincidence that Jared's cow had a calf on his anniversary date in 2018 and then had a calf on his birthday this year. I just thought that it's just the coolest thing ever. And so anyway, Hugh and I discussed it, and because Mama Bill, and that's the name of his mama, that's the name of Jared's cow, and Samson, the baby's daddy, are both such good stock, we decided that we're going to keep the little bull. And so I'm actually looking at names to name him. And I want it to be a gentle sounding name because I'm going to say that he's going to be a gentle cow. His mama's gentle, his daddy's gentle. And we just decided that we'll attempt keeping a bull again, but that we'll make sure that he's gentle enough to not be dangerous, but he's not going to be so friendly that he would be dangerous in another way. That's kind of convoluted sounding, but any of y'all that have animals, especially large livestock type animals, you'll understand what I'm saying there. But I'm glad we're going to keep him. He's a beautiful little calf. I'll take you guys outside and show him to you one day this week. And he's just full of vim and vigor, just bouncing from pillar to post, running up and down the hills, kicking his little back legs out, and he's just having a big old time. I look forward to when one of the other calves are born, because when there's more than 2 calves on a place, it is just a delight just to stand and watch them play, because they are so full of it and so beautiful. They're such a beautiful little creatures. But that's kind of what's, I think, bringing you up today. Aaron and Corey are working on a platform to install a temporary selling venue over by the road. And I think I showed you this in the short, I've been painting my canvases with the gesso and getting those ready to start actually working on the art videos that will start coming out in October. I'm looking forward to that. I've got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to that. And other than that, just the basement, the dark dungeon downstairs that I can't put off forever. I've got to just put on my big girl panties, as they say, and just go downstairs and get her done. The only problem I have with the beans, I don't know if any of y'all that have arthritis, my hands go numb. So I have to take a break every little bit and let the circulation catch back up. And that's just kind of it. I hear one of my critters snoring. I think it's Nala. You can see her over there on her orange bed. She goes deeply to sleep, and she's loud. As in, she will almost wake you up when she's snoring loud. She's my sweet girl. Alright, there's one lapful gone. And I'm going to take this little pillowcase and empty it right here in my little trash bucket. I keep a little bucket here also. So, yeah, that's what I've got started in there. Doesn't look like they moved at all. It's going to take a while. So, let me see. Get another lap full. I don't know if y'all see the back of my head. I happened to comb my hair this morning. And it's cloudy outside today. So that's actually kind of nice. I like working on the beans on kind of cloudy day. When my mother-in-law was alive and we worked on beans, oh my goodness, she loved her soap operas, and that was usually what was on the television. And I'm not a soap opera person, girls. I mean, I'm not going to criticize anybody that is, but that's my least favorite thing to have on the television. But she loved them, so at least once a year, I caught up with what was going on the soaps. Oh my goodness. I guess that's why tomato candy was always more doable for me, because we spent all that time in the kitchen and there wasn't any time spent in the living room listening to the television. My mother rarely put up vegetables. We didn't have a garden that was accessible. The garden that we did have, I've told y'all the story about that one, where we would go down to Carlton. It was in Carlton, Michigan, and it was about a 20-minute drive away from my home. My daddy worked at Ford Motor Company in the afternoon, and in the mornings he had a little business pouring concrete and laying block and brick. He was a mason. So there was just about a 4-hour window between when he would finish what he was doing in the morning and before time for him to report to work in the afternoon at Ford Motor Company. And about once every 2 weeks, we would pile into the little car and we would go, or the truck, whatever, and we would go down to Carlton, Michigan to the little farm my dad owned, and we would try to hoe out a very weedy garden. If any of y'all are familiar with Michigan, it's probably one of the hottest and muggiest states in the nation. And I know a lot of people would say, no, that's got to be Florida or Texas. No, it's not. Those of you that are familiar with Michigan absolutely hear what I'm saying. Michigan is usually during the summers easily 90, 95 degrees, and the humidity is probably 90, 95 degrees. You're surrounded by all those Great Lakes, and it's just a miserably hot place to be in the summertime. So you can imagine being out in the middle of the day in a garden, and the little piece of the 10-acre farm that my dad owned, the front part of it was, flat and where we grew the garden, in the back part of it, there was like a little swamp. And of course, Michigan has loads of little swamps in it. But we would be eaten up by big, huge horseflies and teeny tiny little mosquitoes. In Michigan, the mosquitoes are so tiny that, I mean, they're tiny, but they have a bite like a bumblebee. And so by the time we would be down there for 2 hours and head back home, I would be sunburned, because back then nobody talked about wearing sunscreen or sunblock or anything like that. That's the reason I have to keep having skin cancers removed. But I would have all of these hives all over me from all of the bug bites, and I would just be miserable. And so I grew up thinking that was gardening, and I hated it. I hated it with a passion. It took years and years and years before I finally realized that gardening could actually be pleasant. And I love gardening now, but that's something I never would have. You couldn't have told me when I was a 20-year-old young woman that one day you'll love gardening. No, you're wrong. There's no way. Absolutely no way that will ever happen. But it did. So that was my experience with gardening growing up. So didn't really have a whole lot of experience doing any kind of canning, and I learned pretty much all of what I know about canning from my mother-in-law. She was an expert when it came to canning. But I was going somewhere with that conversation. I derailed, girls. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. I told Aiden the other day, I said, Bud, back when I was a kid, there was no such thing as GMOs, and very few pesticides were used on gardens, even industrial gardens, so that when we would open a can of beans, if my mom opened a can of vegetables, corn, beans, collards, it doesn't matter, whatever kind of vegetables, it was not uncommon for there to be a little worm curled up in the top of those vegetables. And I know a lot of you out there are saying, oh, gross. But I would much rather see some sign of life in those vegetables, of course they were dead, than to know that so much of our food is sprayed and damaged so badly before we ever even open it, before it ever makes it to the supermarket. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the corn, the breed or the type of corn now that is sold even at fruit stands, because I had talked to Hugh's cousin has a fruit stand over in Canton, and I had talked to him one day and asked him specifically if the corn that he sold there was the corn that had been treated, pre-treated for worms or whatever, and he said, yeah, that's pretty much all you can get now, Patty. And I said, that's terrible. It's hard to know. So it's corn especially, we're going to grow our own, but the corn that is grown now in the United States, and probably not in Europe, because Europe, there's so many things that Europe outlaws that the United States allows, and honestly, the European people are healthier for it. The corn ground is pre-treated with a chemical that actually, or the seed is pre-treated, or it may be developed to actually resist any kind of a worm. And years past, those of you that have bought corn years ago, when you pull those silks back, when you start shucking the corn, it was never uncommon for there to be a little worm in those silks right at the tip of the corn. That would usually be it. There occasionally you'd hit one on further down in the corn, but it was usually right there under the silks when you first started shucking the corn. So we just cut the end off, and the corn was perfectly fine. But now you'll rarely open a corn that will have that little worm in it, because the corn itself has already been treated so that there's not that little bug in there. And to me, I just think that things that are being so genetically damaged that even a worm won't try to eat that corn, to me that's just a little disturbing. So I would much rather fight the worm as to have all of those chemicals messing with our food supply. I don't know, what do y'all think? But anyway, well, I'm looking at my little timer and I've kept you on here with me breaking beans for 30 minutes. Listen to me chatter. But it's kind of nice to have some company. It's just me and the dogs in here. Everybody else is busy, but that's perfectly fine. I will turn on some piano. I love to listen to the music it's piano and guitar and violin and cello. It's just so soothing. And Chelsea, when she comes in, she says, "Mom, that's so repetitive. Does that not get on your nerves?" I said, "No, not at all. I love the repetition. I guess that's just what calms me. But I love listening to it, so I'll just turn my little music on and sit here and break beans for another few hours. But I hope that you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. What are we on Tuesday? No, we're on Wednesday. Today is Wednesday. So I will get off of here now and work on my beans. And I'll talk to you soon. Love y'all. Oops, there's my hand right over the thing. Bye-bye. If I can find the button, I'll turn it. Oops. Sorry, girls. All right, now I'll turn it off. Bye-bye.